The temperance movement. Temperance means to stay away from alcohol and alcoholic drinks. Now, why did this movement exist? Well, it started in the early 1800s and lasted till around the 1920s. People started noticing the negative effects that alcohol had. It is common knowledge that some side effects of being intoxicated include irritability, violence, anger, lack of good judgment, and health issues. With the mood swings that come with being intoxicated, it made the streets dangerous and dirty. People had lack of respect for other people and for the environment. It also caused issues within the family because the father would be away getting drunk and not providing for the family, so the mother and children would suffer because in that society back then, women didn't work. Then, once the father did come home, he was not there mentally for his family. So people noticed these effects and wanted to make a change. Alcoholism existed because there were little to no restrictions on the purchasing, manufacturing of, or consumption of alcohol. So many people, including progressive reformers, tried their best and succeeded at first in getting the government to address this issue, but the lasting effects didn't stick. So in all, progressive reformers would be unsuccessful in their efforts to get people to abstain from the overuse of alcohol. The 18th Amendment, the biggest push for temperance, was even eventually unratified. The old amendment states, after 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within, the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territory subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. So this amendment was put in place to try and take back control of the alcohol sales, which would then help alcoholics to not be drunk all the time, leading to better family lives and better streets. This shows that progressive reformers did something about the issue and got the government to make an amendment setting limits and laws on the use, sale, and production of alcohol. So because this was an amendment, you could think that people would follow it, but as you will see later, they did not. People just needed their alcohol. Now here is a picture of an agreement from the USA Temperance Union that coincided with the U.S. Army to abstain from drinking alcohol. This pledge is showing that what groups did in order to push ahead the abstinence towards alcohol usage. So in this case, the efforts from groups worked because the people who signed this signed to abide by these rules of not drinking alcohol. Now did they really stick to this pledge? Only they know. What you see here is a speech from Abraham Lincoln talking about the temperance movement. The part that stands out is when he says, "Turn now to the temperance revolution. In it, we shall find a stronger bondage broken, a viler slavery manumitted, a greater tyrant deposed. In it, more of want supplied, more disease healed, more sorrow assuaged. By it, no orphans starving, no widows weeping. By it, none wounded in feeling, none injured in interest. Even the dram maker and dram seller will have glided into other occupations so gradually as never to have felt the change, and will stand ready to join all others in the universal song of gladness." Now this quote from his speech perfectly explains the ideals of the temperance movement and why people thought it was so important. He is saying that by banding together to abstain from alcohol, we will build a better and more connected and strong society. Alcohol can make you its slave, and you need to break free from it. Sorrow of families will be fixed because they will have their head and provider back. Temperance would bring happiness to all. Well, now this last quote is from an article called "Prohibition: A Case Study of Progressive Reform," and it really connects with the main idea of this documentary. It says, Herbert Hoover called prohibition a noble experiment, but the effort to regulate people's behavior soon ran into trouble. Enforcement of prohibition became very difficult. Soon, such terms as bootlegger, bathtub gin, and speakeasy became household words. Gangs of hoodlums became more powerful as they trafficked in alcohol. By the 1930s, a majority of Americans had tired of the noble experiment, and the 18th Amendment was repealed. This article is saying that although this movement was of good intentions and made to and was made to better society, it ended up causing more problems. It opened up a new black market or legal sale of alcohol. This made streets even more dangerous, and eventually people just decided to stop trying, and temperance got too hard to keep in check with people. Well, now, let's see the difference between two of these four findings. Abraham Lincoln's speech came from a hopeful and inspired perspective. He truly believed that society could change their ways and make the streets safer and families happier. But now with the Prohibition, a case study of progressive reform, this gives the perspective of sharing what started to go wrong. So we go from the speech, which had the first ideals of this movement, and then the article, which was about how those deals started to be ignored and left aside. So these are two very different sources that tell two different stories on the same idea. But which source is more reliable? How can they be two different things on the same idea? Well, Abraham's is more reliable just because he was directly part of that movement at the time that it was actually happening. But both sources are good because the other one is written by the government, which tells us that the information is credible. But generally, sources are more reliable when they are written directly by the people experiencing the event firsthand, which Abraham was. So we have learned what temperance is, why it was important, what some people or groups did to solve the issue of intemperance, and if those efforts stuck with society. Do you think that the temperance movement worked?